Hi, Shorty from the Magic Beans podcast here. Just wanted to apologise before we get into this episode for the quality of my audio. Had some technical difficulties this week. We spent a bit of time trying to clean it up and make it listenable, but it's still pretty bad. So go ahead and listen to it. There's still plenty of good content in the episode, and hopefully the next one will be much better. We won't have any issues. But yeah, again, we apologise for that. So yeah, go ahead and enjoy the episode. Here you go.
Welcome everybody to the Magic Beans podcast. I am your host and my name is Shorty, and we are back again for episode number 5. Glad that you can join us again. For any returning listeners, we're glad to have you, and new listeners, welcome on board. If you are new, make sure you go back and check out our other episodes. I'm joined by a whole bunch of beans again tonight. We're one down, but there's still quite a crew here. So tonight we have, as usual, Scott the Blaster Boy. How you going, Scott?
Very good. How are you, everyone?
G'day. We also have Chewy. How you going, Chewy?
I'm well, Beans. How are you?
Very good. And, of course, we have Cracker tonight. How's it going, Cracker?
Very well. Excited to be back.
Good to hear. So, this weekend was a pretty exciting weekend. We had the Mythic Championship over in Barcelona in Spain, so we're going to spend a bit of time talking about that, and quite a bit of talk about Modern and with our upcoming MCQ that we've got going on. So it's going to be a bit more of a competitive focused episode this time. We've done a few casual ones, and now it's time to get into the competitive things. So we'll have a bit of a chat about the Mythic Championship, the decks that were played, which was basically all Hogak, and what we're planning on doing over the next couple of weeks. But we'll kick it off as we do most weeks with one of our recurring segments. So tonight we're going to go back to our Magic terminology, and we'll have a little bit of a chat about some of the deck names that you might hear coming up later on in the segment. So Chewy's going to have a bit of a chat to us about a few of those things. So you want to take it away, Chewy?
Yeah, thank you. So leading into our discussion about the modern Mythic Championship, almost said Pro Tour, the Mythic Championship, one of the decks that we'll talk about has a particular name, and I thought, well, we should explain what that actually is for people. So we are fairly familiar with the colour pairs being referred to as the guilds that we see in the Ravnica set. We've got it in current standard at the moment. Dimir being blue-black, Boris being red-white, etc. So what we are going to talk about though is that one level higher and the 3 colour pairs, and they get referred to as shards because there was a set going back a few years now, which was the Alara block, and anyway, without going into the depths of the storyline, the plane got split into shards, and where there was those different types of magic that represented by the mana in Magic were split. And they often get referred to as deck names. So a really common deck in Standard at the moment, or over the last little while in Standard, was Esper. The name Esper comes from that block, and now it's just kind of become part of the Magic vernacular, if you like. So a white, blue, black deck is Esper. So you say, oh, I'm playing Esper, or my opponent was on Esper. People just know that those were the colours you're on. The green, white, and blue is Bant. Grixis is, for any of Nicol Bolas fans out there, blue, black, red. Probably my favourite colour combination. Naya, red, white, and green. And one that you'll hear us talk about a little bit as we discuss the Mythic Championship is Jund, which is black, red, and green. And all of those, in the storyline of Alara, they all kind of represented the different types of things that those decks did, or those colours did with their decks and power. So, but in some different formats, they are just a description of the colours played in the deck. So, you'll hear us talk about Jund a little bit.
Yeah, they're pretty common terms that get used now to describe or to name a deck. So it's used pretty commonly in the naming convention. so you will hear us talk about Jund quite a bit, which is a pretty popular deck in Modern at the moment, and Jund is red, green, and black. But yeah, there's a few of those 3-colour pairs as well as the 3-colour pairs. That doesn't make any sense. 3-colour
shards,
whatever that is.
3-colour shards, yeah.
Wedge, that's the term I was thinking of. Yeah. It's a wedge of colours from the 5 colours from the back of the Magic card, basically. The colours are on the back there.
Yeah, and Wizards have gone back there a couple of times, not just to the back of the Magic card, but to having those 3-colour combinations. There'll be a popular one that you would have seen if you've ever played any sort of Modern would be Mardu, which is red, black, and white. Was that the Khans block that those ones came out in? Yeah.
Yep.
And then Abzan was a really popular deck for a really long time in Standard. And then, there are a number of those. So they're probably the more popular ones out of the base ones from the Shards block. And then, you just get Mardu and Abzan would be the ones that you would expect to encounter in most Magic. Jeskai, red, white, and blue, I guess. But each of those has a name, and it's as Joel said when we spoke about Grizzly Bear's last cast, it's a heuristic to get everybody to have that sort of audible. We've seen Sultai decks in recent standards being black, green, and blue. Temur Elementals, green, blue, red. It just gives you that shortcut when you're talking about colour combinations.
Exactly, it's a shortcut, so you know straight away what colours they are. They used to back in the day before they come up with the 3 colours, what's the names for the 3 colours, like red, blue and green would be called rug. R for red, U is what gets used for blue, because we also have black, so they just use B for black and U for blue for some reason, and green. So red, blue, and green ends up with rug. But then we have a I think that was a tribe. I think they were called in Khan's block. That was called Temur, and so now that's a name that sort of sticks. So anytime you play a red, blue, green deck, then it gets called a Temur deck, and it's just a shortcut to help you know right off the bat what colours you're dealing with in that sort of deck.
Yeah, so, and when you do play Temur, you don't choose the rug life. The rug life chooses you.
The other thing that it lets you do is, in shortcutting just the colours, it actually gives you a pretty good idea of the base plan of the deck as well. Because they tend to be very consistent. So if someone says, I'm playing Jund, then you know that they're going to have a lot of removal spells because black and red have a lot of removal in them. And then you know that it's going to go really long. They're going to have some big creatures with green, and they tend to grind it out. And so when someone says, I'm going to Jund them out, that means that they're just going to try and make the game go slow, 1-for-1 removal, and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah, we spoke a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about archetypes, that the different colours lead to, or will generally sort of go into different archetypes and things like that. So, it's the same when you get to 3 colours, that they have play styles, and those play styles are based on what those colours generally do. So, it's again, shortcut, a very handy thing to know, especially when it's talking about Modern, which is going to be the bulk of what we're talking about today. So, Scott, hopefully you'll be able to keep up with all the different terms that we're going to be throwing at you tonight, and you'll pick up a few of those colours along the way and the different naming conventions that we've got.
I've got my pen and paper handy, don't worry.
Good. Take notes, yes, very good.
There's a quiz at the end.
Didn't know that.
You'll probably get more points than the rest of us. That's cool. All right, so thanks for that, Chewy. We're going to do our usual catch up with Scott while we're talking to him, and hear how he's been going with his playing in the last couple of weeks and what he's been up to. So, how have you gone, Scott? I've seen a few screenshots from you this week. It looks like you've been doing pretty well.
A little bit of bragging rights going on. So I did hit gold tier 1 last night.
Well done.
With only about a few hours left in the season, I think it was. So I was pretty chuffed. I was telling the guys before the podcast that my heart was going 100 miles a minute at one point. So and it was basically
had a few tense games.
Oh yeah, and the beauty is, and I don't know, we were talking before the podcast also about people just conceding, and usually I'd find that I would put down 2 of my goblins and then a cavalcade, and they'd concede. So I got a few cheap wins out of that, but it was really satisfying. So I did originally set myself as goal next season, because I didn't think I'd get to tier 1, to get to at least tier 1 next season. And then I think, Shorty, you gave me the good news the other night that you start at silver now, which I do.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so you don't drop back to the start, and we eventually we'll get to our arena focused episode, and we'll explain all that sort of stuff to you. But we keep having things that we need to talk about. So you don't drop all the way down, which is good.
Yeah, that's good. So now my goal is obviously platinum will be next. So I've got 30 days to get there, and but. The weird thing is that you do get incredibly addicted to this game, and that's one thing I have found over the last few weeks, and you can see that from my mastery tree levels now are sitting around 73, I think. And it's just a lot of games going in there, a lot of grinding.
Wow,
yeah, it's good. I think I'm on like 16 or something.
Oh,
so
really?
I've barely played.
Well, see, I'm probably lucky. I get to play a lot, so especially with my wife sort of playing 3 nights a week, it's easy for me to get in and play. But yeah, so apart from that, I watched a little bit of the Mythic Championship. I know we're going to talk about that later on.
Okay, good.
But
good to hear.
yeah, I did watch a little bit of that, and I became a bit of a Thor fan. So just because I like the name, and I thought he was pretty cool as well. And I actually, although I didn't really know what was going on, it was still good to hear a lot of the panelists talking about deck builds and why certain players were playing certain things, and so it was a good learning curve anyway for me. So
yeah,
this
was
good. Probably the best coverage that we've had on a paper Mythic Championship so far. They did a very good job.
Yeah.
And now that's what I was going to ask, Scott. So, assuming you've probably watched other streams of other games, like large tournaments and that sort of stuff, how did you find watching a Magic tournament and being a paper Magic tournament? I'm pretty sure you've watched some of the arena tournaments before, but how did you find actually watching a paper tournament? Is it with, like, do the commentators do a good job of keeping you up to date on what's going on and explaining things, or is it all just going over your head, or like how's that experience?
They did a really good job of commentating and running you through the plays. A lot of the plays did go over my head purely because I didn't know what the cards were and I didn't know what the ramifications for each play would be. But they did a great job anyway of keeping me entertained enough that I'd want to start to watch more of it and learn more of it. So they did a good job in that sense. And I thought the quality was really good. I love the way they so go on.
Yeah, did you get a chance to play with the Cardboard Live app, the screen overlay that they had on Twitch, where you could hover your mouse over the card that was in their hand and you got a larger size pop-up of the card?
Oh, what? No, I didn't even know.
Yeah, that's pretty recent. So cool. I think it's only the last few tournaments that they've had that sort of going, and yeah, it's pretty handy for helping to keep track of what's going on and understanding the plays and the cards that they're talking about and that sort of stuff. So definitely keep an eye out for that.
It's an app, is it? And you can just hold up to your
It's
monitor?
integrated into Twitch.
Yeah.
So yeah, even on like iPads and things like that as well, you can mouse over the cards that are basically sort of linked, and it will show you what cards are in their hand and the deck list and stuff like that. So
oh man,
yeah, it's pretty cool. So yeah, it's a good system. They seem to be improving it. It's becoming better and better. And yeah, it definitely helps with the paper tournaments. So in the past, they've had a lot of issues with the tabletop tournaments where you get a lot of glare from the lights on the cards and on people's sleeves and foil cards, and you can't really tell what's going on. But they seem to have sorted a lot of those issues out, and you can make out what's going on.
Yeah, I didn't notice that at all.
It's hard to know, like for someone like myself and for Chewy and Joel as well. We know a lot of the stuff. We know what's going on. We know the cards. You can show us a picture of a card, and we know what it is. And we understand how the game's working. It's hard for us to sort of put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who doesn't know quite what's going on and see what it would actually be like to watch that. And if it's something that you watch for 30 seconds and go, oh no, I'm not watching this, and turn it off and go and find something else to watch, or if it actually makes you want to hang around and watch it. So.
No, it definitely made me want to sit down and watch it. I ended up watching it in the lounge room on the big screen. I just streamed it through my phone.
I think almost all of us ended up doing that. It was pretty good.
And that was a nice way of watching it. So it was just really, really well done. I think the last tournament I ever watched was a South Park episode where the two chickens played Magic the Gathering. that was it. So,
that's entirely competitive magic there.
So I saw a different element of the game this time around. So, but yeah, no,
Very good.
I was really impressed with it. So it's now made me look forward to the qualifier coming up.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, yeah, we're going to have a bit of a recap on that Mythic Championship. So it was Mythic Championship 4 as I said, held in Barcelona in Spain. And yeah, it's fair to say that there was one deck that was definitely the boogeyman of the weekend. They didn't show, if all you did was watch coverage, they didn't really show much of it. They did a pretty good job of hiding it, but the numbers certainly reflected just how powerful the Hogak deck was. But yeah, we're going to have a bit of a run through that, go through the top 8, have a bit of a chat about the metagame breakdown and those sorts of things. This is where we start to get into the competitive talk. So, Cracker, do you want to take us through the top 8 and who won and all that sort of stuff?
Absolutely, love to. So, as Scott just mentioned, the guy won, Thorolf Severin, was on Tron. So he was playing old school traditional mono green Tron. So the Urza lands and a few forests thrown in to be able to find the Urza lands, and then just winning through Khans. And I watched the finals, and man, he had some very timely Ulamogs, I tell you. Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger.
He was pretty lucky with his draws and getting natural Trons and things like that.
Yeah, but I mean, as Chewy was saying a couple of weeks ago, you know, the Tron deck really gained a lot from the London Mulligan, and it showed.
Yes,
the
definitely.
dude, he just ran through the field. He won the final in 4 games, and just he was
on 1 life. He won the last game on 1 life.
He did, but the game that he lost, he was only 1 mana short of casting an Ulamog that he found and would have won on the spot. So, like, Modern is swingy as, right? He was super unlucky to lose the previous game and then super lucky to win the last one that he did. But and the deck that he beat was Hardened Scales, which is another basically colourless deck with a few forests thrown in. And it's, if you like bulk maths, that's your deck. Don't know how else to describe it. It's just lots of moving 1/1 counters around onto creatures and things, and
yeah,
it gets very silly,
very complicated,
very
and it's very easy. I remember them saying it on coverage that sometimes you look like from the opponent's side and you go, oh yeah, it's okay, you know, they can move a few counters around and I'm not dead, that's fine. But if you actually know the full extent of what you can do with that deck, it's like, no, you're completely dead. I can move this and sack this guy and do this and whatever, and all of a sudden my creature's massive and you're dead. So there's a lot of math in that deck.
So, Scott, there's a Hardened Scales is that the card in that deck that the deck is named after. It's a 1 mana enchantment. It's a green enchantment, and it says whenever a +1 counter would be put on a creature, you add an additional +1 counter. So everything comes into play with +1 counters on it. And then there is Arcbound Ravager, which you can sacrifice an artifact to put a +1 counter on it. But then the creatures that you're sacrificing have the modular ability from that set, from the Mirrodin set. So you sacrifice Arcbound Worker, which has a 1/1 counter on it. That puts a counter on Arcbound Ravager, which puts 2 on it. And then the modular ability, that counter moves to the Ravager and puts 2 on it. So you sacrifice 1 artifact, you get 4 +1 counters, and you can move all of those onto a land and attack for 10 poison damage, or move them onto a Walking Ballista and just, you know, deal an enormous amount of damage to your opponent. So it's scary, but a lot of counting, and that makes my head hurt.
Yeah.
Do you remember the part where I said it was really complicated? Yeah, it's just a lot of maths.
I just explained it as simply as I could.
Yeah, exactly.
Just give me 5 balls, that's all I want.
Yeah. So that was first and second, and then the rest of the top 8 was made up of Eldrazi Tron,
Yes.
Jund. So there were a couple of different versions of Jund. There was a Hogak deck, there was a Mono Red Phoenix, and there was a Urza Thopter Sword. And so they are the top 8. We have to give a giant shout out to David Mines, a fellow Australian who overcame the incredible odds of winning games in Modern with Jund. Apparently, he thought that was a really good idea. And they picked up some new tools, right? Renin 6 is...
Renin 6 makes a big difference.
Big difference. It's kind of replaced Dark Confidant in a number of decks, and also Old Pyromancer, seasoned Pyromancer. he was making an appearance and putting in some really good work. And he did really well. We're very.
Where did he finish in the end?
So he lost in the first round.
In the
quarterfinals, he lost to Thorolf because
Severin.
So Tron beats up on Jund. Basically,
that matchup is pretty one-sided.
Mind you, that said, he actually won the previous time they faced, which basically locked him for top 8 in day 2. So, it wasn't an unwinnable match, but it was pretty unlikely. And so,
that's right. Well, it's the same for any matchup, but there's always a percentage chance.
Yeah. He did really well. So, well done, David. Congrats.
Yeah. Congrats to David Lawrence. We've definitely seen him around over the years at various tournaments. Old school WMCQs and things like that. Don't know him personally. Chewy, I don't know if you know him personally, but I've definitely seen him around over the years.
Cross paths occasionally and recognise each other, but I don't think he knows my name.
he's pretty much probably the best Aussie. He's definitely he plays in almost every Mythic Championship or Pro Tour. So congrats to him. It's great to see an Aussie up there. We don't see them very often, which is pretty cool.
This is the first time in I think it was 10 or 11 years there hasn't been an American in the top 8.
Yeah.
It was
crazy.
Pretty nuts. But speaking of things that are nuts, Hogak. So let's talk about the Hogak deck for a second, right, boys? Because it was the most played deck of the MC at 22 and a bit percent for the traditional, the standard Hogak build. And then there was also a Hogak Dredge deck that also was in there. I just wanted to run through just a quick reading of the next few decks. So there's the top 8, and then under that there's the decks that had 8 wins in constructed. And I'm just going to run down them real quick. There's 17. It goes Hogak, 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 Hogak Dredge, Hogak Dredge, Humans, Is It Phoenix, Jund, Tron, Thopter Sword, Blue White Control, Blue White Control. So, of the 17 decks, 11 were Hogak variants.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I looked at MCQ Goldfish. They're obviously very good at doing all this sort of stuff with all their wrap-ups, write-ups and percentages, and they get all their info from Frank Carsten and all that sort of stuff as well. But they do a very good job putting it together. But I've found a chart that shows the percentage of the meta for Hogak at certain stages throughout the tournament. So day 1, as Joel said, the percentage was over 21% was Hogak. Day 2 was 24%, so a fair chunk of them won, and we still ended up with 24% in day 2. But then when you actually look at the final results and see in the winning areas, so there are how many rounds of Modern? There's 10 rounds of Modern in the Mythic Championship. So in the 6+ wins bracket, there's nearly 30% of the decks are Hogak. 7+ wins, that's 36%. And when you get to 8+ wins, which is the top decks that are doing extremely well, 45% of the metagame is Hogak decks.
Yeah, that's what I was just reading out. It's
bonkers.
Yeah, so let's put that into a little more context. The most played card at this Mythic Championship was Leyline of the Void, which says if a card would be put into opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. And Hogak is a graveyard deck. So it achieved those unprecedented numbers with probably the most
hateful environment you could imagine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
People were main decking this card knowing that this deck was good, and everybody was playing, multiple copies, at minimum 3, if not 4 copies in their sideboard. And
some people were playing it in the main. There was a team that were playing Hogak, and they played two ley lines in the main just to improve the mirror match.
The deck that made the top 8 had 2 copies in the main.
That's right. Martin Mueller.
So the most toxic environment possible for a deck to live, and it not only lived, it thrived, worked its way up the food chain, and basically consumed all others.
Yeah. So Scott, the thing where I don't think we've actually explained what this deck does, but basically you're playing a bunch of creatures that when you play them, when they come into play, they put cards from your library into the graveyard. So you fill your graveyard really quickly, and then you get There's cards called there's Bloodghast, which if it's in your graveyard and you play a land, it comes from your graveyard onto the battlefield. So it's basically a free creature out of your graveyard. There's a card called Vengevine that if it's in your graveyard and you've cast 2 creature spells in the turn, it comes from your graveyard out to the battlefield. So it's a free creature. It's a 4/3 creature with haste for some reason. It's green. And then there's Hogak, which is the main culprit, which is a 7-mana creature, 7-mana 8/8 trample that you can cast from your graveyard, and it has Convoke, which means you can tap other creatures instead of paying its mana cost, or you can Delve, which is exiling cards from your graveyard to help pay its mana cost. So I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and a guy was saying that he had he mulliganed to 5. So kept a 5 card hand with 1 land. Turn 1 played a Stitch of the Supplier. I can't remember exactly how he said he did it.
Turn 2 he played another Stitch of Supplier, and then he brought back a Hogak and a Vengevine.
Oh.
Yes.
Because when Stitch of Supplier enters the battlefield, it mills the top 3 cards.
Yeah,
and so he played that again.
Power on
so he played a fetch land on turn 1,
he,
and then he went Stitch of Supplier turn 1, Stitch of Supplier turn 2, tapped them both, brought back a Hogak, and because he brought back a Hogak and played Stitch of Supplier, brought back a Vengevine. So he attacked for 4 on turn 2, and then he had an 8/8 and 2 more 1/1s on turn 2.
So this guy was saying he actually brought back 2 Vengevines. So
there you go.
2 Stitches Suppliers, a Hogak, and 2 Vengevines on turn 2 with 1 land. So 18 power on the battlefield turn 2. 8 of that is hasty. It's ridiculous. The deck is absolutely crazy. So
the reason they thought that Hogak was fair is there's one more line of text that we didn't read because it's irrelevant. It says, you can't use mana to cast this spell. So you can't tap your lands to help pay for any of the costs of it. So the 7 total converted mana of the spell has to be paid for by either exiling cards from your graveyard or tapping creatures you have in play. But the problem is, it just doesn't matter at all. And you just cast it from your graveyard. So if it dies, you cast it from your graveyard. It is stupid.
I heard that with the London Mulligan rule, that something like 70% of games, you can have Hogak on the table on turn 2.
Jeez.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
So is there a ban coming, or...?
Good question.
Yeah, so that's the next question. Yeah, so they banned, I think we spoke about it on the previous episode, they banned the previous iteration of this deck used a card called Bridge from Below and Alter Dementia.
Yep.
Is that the one? Yeah. And it was more a combo where you actually milled your opponent out. You got rid of all the cards in their library and then passed the turn, and it was their turn, and they lost the game.
That sounds like you.
They banned Bridge from Below a couple of weeks ago, and
the deck got better.
The deck, all the pros on the weekend were saying, and you probably would have heard it on coverage and not quite understood what they meant, but all the pros are saying it actually made the deck better, which doesn't, on face value, doesn't make much sense. You go, well, they banned the card out of it, how does it make it better? But what it did was it forced everybody to find the actual best version of the deck, rather than just this is the super easy version that just wins easy. It's now we're going to spend some time testing and find a legitimate good version of the deck. And now it's crazy powerful. So, that's the thought is, or the question is, are we going to get a ban? The next ban and restriction announcement isn't until close to the end of August, so pretty much a month away from when this recording is. And it is currently what's called Modern Season, which is when all the Mythic Championship qualifiers and all those sorts of things are modern.
Also, all the GPs. So there's 2 really big GPs coming up. GP Vegas, which is the biggest Magic event of the year anywhere in the world, is coming up in the next few weeks, and they'll do video coverage of it, and there's a modern, Grand Prix as the main event there. And I mean, if Hogak isn't banned, it's going to be everywhere. There's just no way that people who can get their hands on the cards will be playing it, because it is the most broken thing you can do. And people will say, you just need to adjust. Like a little while ago, people were calling for a ban of a card called Death's Shadow, right? And it was this whole deck, and everyone's like, it's too good, it's a 1 mana 8/8 or 12-12 or whatever it ended up being, because it gets bigger as you lose life. But the metagame adjusted, and the deck is still really good. But, I mean, it's not in the top tables of the MC that just happened. And, because people adjusted. They learned how to play against the deck.
Yeah, but then sometimes they ban decks that they could adjust against.
No, that's true, but all I'm saying is...
Here comes the KCI.
Wait, hang on. So the point here is that Hogak has just absolutely crushed in the most hostile environment that you can make. So it's not possible.
It's gotta go.
It's not possible for the modern metagame to adjust any more than it already did.
No.
So there's no more cards that we can bring in. There is no better answer than Leyline of the Void.
But is there a chance, though, that they'll ban it before Vegas, or...
Well, that's the question.
Soon?
No one knows. So Wizards does occasionally do what's called emergency bans, where they'll just randomly make an announcement, go, hey, we looked at this, and by the way, that was a mistake, sorry, and we ban it. You know, it's happened a few times in the last few years. They typically try and avoid it because...
It's not a good look.
It's not. That, you know, it shakes confidence is the thing that people talk about. It's
effectively them admitting that they did something wrong and they printed a card that they shouldn't, and their testing missed how powerful it was going to be and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, you can see why it will be something they'd avoid, but there's also like the financial side of it as well. People buy into a deck and then it just gets banned out of nowhere. So, yeah, there's all that to consider as well.
It's worth saying that, like, if you were to go and buy, I'm just looking on the MCG Goldfish site now, the average cost, it's about $1,000-$1,200 US.
Ooh.
So that's like
to
buying
buy the whole deck, not
to
just
buy the whole deck. Correct.
Yeah,
but I mean,
it's not abnormal for a modern deck.
It's not even close. Like Jund is $1,800-$1,900, so it's not like the most expensive, but that is by no means, you know, chicken feed, right? Like, not many people have $1,200 that they can just go and throw a new modern deck because it's the hotness, and then if they do. And someone turns around and goes, by the way, Hogak is banned, you've just lost a huge value out of that.
Considering that the deck that I want to take to the qualifier in a few weeks is about $30.
Value, it's all about the value. Your entry into the tournament costs more than that.
You got to factor in the sleeves.
Yeah. But I think that price is actually being held down a little bit by the fear that it's going to get banned. Like, Hogak itself it's what, I'm just looking it up now, it's like $8 or $7 or something like that. Like, it's not much, which for a card that's played as a 4-of in so many decks, it should be way more than that, and especially coming from the Modern Horizon set. So, it should be more.
Yeah, you look at it compared to like Ren and 6, for example, and admittedly, like, Hogak is a rare and Ren and 6 is a mythic. But Ren and 6 is
in other formats, though.
It does, but it's more than $100. It's $100 more than Hogak is, and like, sure, it put, you know, some copies in the top 8, but like, just as a comparison kind of point, like, it is definitely artificially low given the prevalence of what we're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. So, do we think? What's your guess? Emergency ban? Yes or no?
I'm going to say no.
I'll play devil's advocate and say yes. Then I
think they should, but I think that they're going to try and save face and just let it ride. They did the same thing with Eldrazi Winter, right?
They did. That was a little bit different though, because when it was that Mythic Championship for Eldrazi Winter, it wasn't as represented.
That's true, but its win rate was
but
that win rate was like over 75% or something.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, but I think they will. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe even by the time this podcast comes out that they've come out and said something. But yeah, I'm tipping in the next week or so that they will. I reckon once they start looking at the actual numbers, like the actual win percentages, and they use all their Magic Online data as well, that gives them a really good indication of how quick the decks are and that sort of stuff. I reckon they will. The deck's just crazy powerful. I mean, we'll talk about it soon. We did a bit of testing on the weekend. I'd never played the deck before. Sat down, and almost every game it was just turn 2 or 3, you're dead. Sorry.
Wow.
It's without any practice or really knowing how the deck works. It's just crazy. So, yeah, I don't think they can let it last until Vegas. But who knows? It's their call at the end of the day. So, yeah.
Do you think if Vegas wasn't coming up, they would even think about it? How much do you think that having a tournament that large with video coverage, with, you know, something that is like one of their premier non-Mythic Championship events on the horizon, how much will that influence their decision to ban or not ban, do you think?
I reckon if it wasn't modern season where there was a whole bunch of modern tournaments and Vegas coming up, that sort of stuff, then I don't reckon they would do anything. I think they could wait that 3 or 4 weeks until the next ban announcement. But the thing you've got to look at is, with all these tournaments coming up, people are testing all the time. So they either need to make a decision really soon to allow people to adjust decks and buy new cards and things like that. They can't wait until the week before Vegas. And I reckon that's going to force them to do it. So
either that, or they need to make the announcement saying that they're not going to do anything, so people can lock it in, right?
Yeah, not knowing's the worst bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And
so that I can start goldfishing.
Yeah,
for.
We'll get to that.
Well, I mean, should we move into that? Is there anything else people wanted to talk about?
Did anybody else have anything from the Mythic Championship? Any cool decks? I saw there was the Urza Thopter Sword deck. That's a really cool deck. We played a little bit of that on the weekend as well in some of our testing, and that's a very cool deck. Chewy, we mentioned it to you multiple times on the weekend. That's definitely the sort of deck I could see you playing. It's got that sort of KCI feel to it a little bit.
That oops, I win.
Yeah. It's very powerful even when it doesn't have the combo, but when you get the combo, it's like, cool, I just cast my entire deck.
You should probably explain the combo now.
Nah, we don't need to do that sort of stuff. We don't have any new players on this podcast, do we?
you know the Thopter Sword combo, don't you, Scott?
Yeah, why doesn't Scott explain it to us?
Yeah, I'll explain it.
Okay.
Go on, Sean.
Yeah, so I don't want to explain it.
Okay, I'll explain it. Okay, so there's a card called Thopter Foundry, and it costs a blue mana. It's a 2 mana artifact. It's blue mana and an either black or white, one of the hybrid mana symbols. And you pay 1 mana and sacrifice a non-token artifact, and you create a 1/1 flyer and you gain a life. So that combos well with a card called Sword of the Meek, which is a 2 mana artifact, and you sacrifice that and to the Thopter Foundry, you get a flyer. But then Sword of the Meek says if a 1/1 creature had come into play under your control, it comes from your graveyard into play. So for as much mana as you have, you can create that many 1/1 flyers and gain that much life. Then a printing out of Modern Horizons is Urza Lord High Artificer, and Urza has a lot of text, like bulk text, but the important one for the combo is that tap an untapped artifact you control, add blue. So what you can do is, in the midst of that combo, you can actually tap the Sword of the Meek and the token that it is created, the Thopter, to add blue mana to your mana pool. So you're gaining mana every time that you do this. So 1 mana to pay for the Thopter Foundry, 1 mana into your pool. Then, so you build up and you have, an arbitrary large amount of mana. And then Urza's bottom line of text says, pay 5 mana, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. So you exile all the cards in your deck, basically, and, you create huge amounts of, you cast everything that you have, which makes, everything is this, enormous board presence. And then in the next turn, you attack with your, Googleplex of
million Thopters.
Sorry, Scott. Someone's going to make you 1 million life against you, buddy. And you'll be sitting there with 3 mountains in play going, but I'm playing goblins.
Skullcracker. My Skullcracker.
Yeah, Mighty Strike.
Yeah.
That's right.
999,000.
So the deck's super cool. It plays,
there's a lot of ways to enable it. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's got a toolbox feel about it. It's very cool. And Shorty's right. It is something that's kind of in my wheelhouse. But, it's not the deck that I'm, sort of sold on with the Mythic Championship coming up. But
there's a few weeks for you to change your mind.
Yeah, well, we'll see how we go.
I'm not playing that deck. That deck will just destroy my brain over the course of the day. As much as I'd like to, I think I'd really enjoy playing it too. But yeah, I think that deck will require a lot of practice to find those lines.
That's a really important point. As you mentioned before, when I was having a little side whinge, I played the KCI combo deck in the last Modern season before it was banned, and I took it to a couple of PPTQs, and I tell you what, driving home after those was struggling to, I was exhausted. I was mentally completely drained. So I won't go into the depths of why the deck is so complex to play, because it's banned, it's now irrelevant, but
That's right.
it was one of the most exhausting Magic decks I've ever played in my life. So
Yeah.
So maybe just to put the final point, or the starting point on this, so we are recording on the 1st of August, and on the 17th, we have an MCQ here in Melbourne, which all of us are planning on attending. And so
Mythic Championship qualifier for those
that's
who don't know
exactly what
MCQ
it means.
is.
It's
Yep.
the new one of these events, and basically, if you win it, you get an invite to go play in the Mythic Championship, wherever that next one is. I think next one's in Richmond, in America.
Yeah, it's Richmond.
And so basically, we
Not Richmond in Melbourne.
that would be super convenient.
that would suck.
I'd be able to go to that one.
Yeah.
Easy.
But basically, we're paying really close attention to this, this Mythic Championship in the past weekend because, one, it's high-level Modern, which we don't get to see a huge amount of anymore. And
We're all pretty big fans of one.
we love Modern. It's probably our favourite format. And it also means that it gives us some kind of insight as to, what we can expect from players who are going to be playing at this MCQ against us. So we've started testing, which is what Shorty was alluding to.
Yeah. So we wanted to have a bit of a chat about what our plan is for testing for the MCQ. That's, as Joel said, is coming up. How we go about that, with fitting that into our lives and that sort of stuff, and what we might expect to see at the tournament and that sort of stuff. So, yeah, as we mentioned before, a few of us caught up on the weekend and we got to jam a bunch of games. We had our personal card shop attend our testing sessions, so he brought, a dozen
All the
decks with him.
decks. All the decks.
Joel brought his completely proxied up Cheerios deck. It was quite amusing.
So for
Basically,
those
Scott,
who've never seen it, Joel
I printed out an entire deck, including basic lands, in black and white ink.
Proxy
And then I put it in.
planes.
I put it in sleeves of another deck in front of the real Magic cards, and just it was. Shorty was so tilted. He's like, "What's that?" I was like, "It's a planes." He's like, "You proxied a planes? What is wrong with you?" I just
Test
couldn't be
cards. I don't think we're allowed to say proxy anymore, are we? Play test cards.
sure. They were play test.
Yeah.
So
It's so testing for a major event. We sort of touched on it last week when we were sort of talking about finding the time to play and that sort of thing. That it can be quite hard, and not just for us with busy lives, but you might be completely on your own, isolated from other people, work in the evenings, can't get to tournament, whatever. Everyone's got a reason why it's harder to test. It's one of the hardest things to do. But every now and then, we manage to get together as a group and jam a bunch of games. And we're probably not the strictest on our testing. We're certainly not a pro team. The pro teams who go to the Mythic Championship, they will generally hire a house or apartments or whatever, but they'll sort of stay together for at least a week prior to a Mythic Championship.
Can we do that?
And I'll just... I would love to do that, but no.
we don't stand to win $100,000 though.
That's what we were meant to be doing when we were in Singapore
That's right.
last year or whatever, and that didn't work. But yeah, they will spend a week or 2 weeks of solid testing, and it's very methodical in how they do it, and they keep track of all their wins and losses, and they'll sit down and go, right, we want to test this matchup, this specific matchup. We want to test Hogak versus a Thopter Sword, and they'll get everybody playing it, and they'll all play 20 games each, and put in their results and work out all that sort of stuff. And that's how they figure out what decks are the best and what they want to play, and they try their sideboards. But they're also testing for draft, because there's always a draft in the Mythic Championships as well. So there's a lot that goes into it. We can't do that. The only people that can do that are people that play Magic full time, and that's none of us, and probably nobody that listens to this podcast. So how do we fit testing into our lives? Well, first thing we try and do is pick a weekend, pick a night of the week, Saturday night, whatever it is, and try and get together and jam a bunch of games, which is what we managed to do on Saturday. Play play a bunch of matchups and sort of see how they go. So that's a good start.
Yeah, it was really sweet. Like, we all got together. There was a million kids running around, so you'd learn to play with distractions. And we had the Mythic Championship on the TV in the background, so it was really good.
Yeah, for once we had a Mythic Championship that was on a reasonable time zone for us. They're usually, well, most of them are held in the States, and it's just a horrible time for us to try and watch them. But yeah, this one was pretty good for us. That worked out well, and yeah, just pretty good up on the big screen. Getting distracted when Mindsy was playing in the top 8, that sort of stuff. So that was pretty cool. Or playing for top 8. But yeah, when we get together, what's our aim when we get together and try and play games in person? What are we trying to get out of actual real life playing?
I'll jump in.
Oh, yep, go.
So, I mentioned previously that the deck I've played the most in Modern is another graveyard strategy called Living End. And given how much graveyard hate there is at the moment, it's insane to try and play a deck into that. And there's another deck, the one that I'm pretty sure I'm going to play now, is called Cheerios. And it's a combo deck. It plays a couple of different creatures that say, there's one called SRAM and there's another one called Pure Steel Paladin. They're both bears. They're 2/2s for 2. But they both say, basically, whenever a artifact or an equipment enters the battlefield, you get to draw a card. And so the idea, Scott, is you just play like 24 0-mana equipment in the deck, and you just cycle through them. So you play one, you draw a card, you play another one, you draw a card, you play another one. And if you have 2 of these guys out in the battlefield, then you play one, you draw 2 cards. Or if you have 3, you play one and you draw 3 cards. And so you very quickly build up a storm count, and your win condition is Grape Shot, for the most part, which is a card that has Storm. It's 1 and a red, it's a sorcery, and it deals 1 damage to any target for each spell you've cast this turn. And so, there are points with this deck very quickly where you can effectively draw the entire deck and cast all of these artifacts. So that's new for me. That's not kind of the deck that I've been playing for years, but it's a different strategy. It doesn't rely on the graveyard. It doesn't rely on the combat step. I really like combo decks. They're just fun for me. And so what I was really wanting to do was sit down and go, all right, I need to play this and work out what hands I can keep. What happens when I go, like I was playing against Shorty, right? And he sat down with Is It Phoenix? And I sat down with Cheerios, and it would be like, all right, I cast my Pure Steel Paladin, and then I cast my first artifact, and he goes, in response, bolt your Pure Steel Paladin. So it dies. I don't get to draw a card, and I'm sitting there with an equipment and no creatures. It doesn't do anything. So effectively, my deck has stopped completely in its tracks. And for me, it's about learning, what hands can I keep? What interaction do I need to play around? How does it sequence? What happens when you're actually not just goldfishing it on your kitchen table, and when someone's actually... exactly. When someone's trying to stop me from killing them on turn 2, which is my goal, and the deck can do quite consistently, and super consistently on turn 3, if no one kills your creature. So, it's about learning what happens in the real world. So that's what I'm looking for, is what hands can I keep?
I'll jump in, because I think what Joel was just saying was actually different to what my aim was for for that testing session. So I guess everybody wants something different out of those testing sessions. So Chris, for example, who came, he didn't know really what deck he wanted to play. He didn't really have an idea. He had a literal bag of decks that were potential decks, and he was trying to narrow that down to a deck that he could play. I was pretty set on my deck leading in. Actually, before the Mythic Championship came up, I checked some Magic Online results, and I pretty much locked myself into play Eldrazi Tron. I played Eldrazi in Legacy, and it had something that was quite similar going on, but with the addition of Khan, the Great Creator, from the War of the Spark set, and that combos with Mycosynth Lattice, which would give you a lock. Basically, your opponent couldn't, do anything. They couldn't tap their lands for mana, and I wanted to play that deck. I wanted to see if it was any good against the gauntlet of decks that we had, and I can sit at my kitchen table and goldfish my deck constantly and get some information out of it. Like, this is definitely a hand that I have to mulligan, and if I'd played this land first rather than that land, then this would have been a better board state for me. So I can get those little things when I'm gold fishing, but there's nothing like playing an actual game. And it lets you.
Quick question: so gold fishing, is that just where you play pretend games, is it? Or is it actually feeding your fish?
Gold fishing is when you sit down and you play the deck yourself. So you got the physical cards. There's a lot of benefits to this in learning the deck.
Very, very many benefits.
And also it lets you practice the game sequences that your deck might have. It's like, when this comes in, I get a counter. When this goes to the graveyard, this trigger happens. So if you're playing, I'll put it into context of mono red for you, Scott. If you are playing the Runaway Steamkin, then, you play red spell. Remember you've got to physically pick up the dice and move it on the card. And, if you forget that, then it's gone. You can't go back. Whereas Arena does that for you, right? So you've got to, it gives you the dexterity element of Magic. It lets you practice that, and so that becomes second nature.
You get to work on your mechanical actions of actually playing the deck. And when you're playing your deck like Hardened Scales or something like that, where you've got a lot of counters and you're always ticking up dice and you're moving things here and there and whatever. If you're just playing online or you're playing Arena, it does it all for you.
Okay.
And then if that's all you've done, and then you go and sit down to play a tabletop tournament, then you don't know what you're doing. You're going to mess things up. You're going to miss things that were done automatically for you. You're going to put things in the wrong places, all that sort of stuff. So gold fishing, I have no idea where that term came from, but it's something that's very, very helpful, and I'll spend hours literally doing this. Usually when I'm watching TV with my wife, I've got my deck and I'm sitting there on the coffee table and I'm just playing through, and I might just play through the first 5 turns of whatever I'm doing, but it just lets me see how my deck draws, how I keep track of my dice, all that sort of stuff. And one thing, and we'll probably touch on this a little bit more with you next week or on the next podcast, but when you're casting spells like light up the stage like you do on Arena and in Standard, where do you put the cards that you flip over from right up the stage? You don't think about those things when you're playing on Arena, but when you play in person, you need to put those 2 cards somewhere, but you need to keep them separate from the rest of the cards that are on your battlefield and the cards that are in your hand and all that sort of stuff. So gold fishing lets you figure out stuff with your deck, as well as kind of figure out how to physically play the deck in person. So, when you're playing combo decks like Cracker was talking about with his Cheerios deck, it lets you learn the combo and learn exactly how to play those little lines and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So another option for testing, which I'm pretty sure none of us are doing anymore, is playing Magic Online. With this upcoming MCQ being Modern, that's pretty much the only place online to test. We can't, unfortunately, yet, or maybe never, do that on Arena. So normally with Standard, the previous MCQ, for a lot of us, excuse me, we were testing on Arena, but Magic Online is the only place to play Modern. So are any of you guys planning on testing online at all?
Maybe. I'd have to spend a little bit of money. I own the majority of the cards for my deck. But I'd have to buy like Khans and maybe a couple of Chalice of the Void. So I'd have to spend like $100. So it's just whether I want to do that on a dead platform or not.
So it's definitely a good resource if you're someone who's already invested in Magic Online, or there are deck loaning services on Magic Online, like Mana Traders, where you can borrow. You pay like a monthly fee and you can borrow decks, so you don't have to actually pay for them. It's a pretty good option, and like I said, that's kind of the only option for testing online these days. It is really good if you want to do that testing. The program is horrible, which is why none of us test on there, but that's definitely a good option. You can get in a ton of reps. You've got access to heaps of people to play. What other ways are we sort of planning on testing over the next couple of weeks? Yeah, definitely. Well, I think a few of us are going to catch up again down in Geelong this weekend, upcoming weekend. So we'll probably jam a few games then, try and be productive in what we're doing. You not get distracted by people wanting to play Commander too much.
We'll probably still play some Commander though.
Yeah, we may.
Another way to get some like literally real world testing in is to try and get to a local. And I guess this is something that I will try to do, but some advice for people that, might be on their own. They might not have a lot of friends that play Magic, or even if you do, you can't substitute actual tournament play. So getting to your local game store. Most game stores will have Modern on a weekly or fortnightly basis. I recommend getting the deck that you are most likely to play and just run it through some games. You'll get 3 or 4 rounds in on a weeknight, and you can sit there and goldfish, or we can play against each other. But actual tournament conditions, the best test, that acid test, if you like, and puts yourself and your deck in a real environment, but leading up to the MCQ. So that's the best testing I think you could do in paper.
Yeah, you're just not allowed to use printed planes. All right, just
no, you will get disqualified from the tournament.
Real cards, unfortunately, you can't just take your printed pieces of paper in. They won't appreciate that.
Don't do that.
But I agree. That's the best way to do it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. Yeah, like playing in person, you're going to get that interaction, which you don't get when you're gold fishing and sort of, I guess going up against yourself effectively. One way, just sort of last point on the gold fishing, one way that I've tested in the past when I didn't have access to Magic Online, that sort of stuff, is there's online services like Tapped Out is one that I use quite a lot for building deck lists, tappedout.net I think it's called, where you can build your deck list, but you can also play that deck on there, which you just effectively gold fishing it. But what I used to do, and this sounds really weird when you sort of say it out loud, but I used to play against myself. I would literally have 2 windows open or 2 screens going with 2 different decks, and I would literally play a game against myself. And what I found, it sounds really weird,
solid
and you've got
50% win rate.
Yeah, I'm very good at beating. I'm 100% against myself. I always.
Yeah, you always lose. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's right. I either always win or I always lose, whichever way you look at it. But what I found with it is you can play a ton of games really quickly because you do a lot of shortcutting because okay, I'm just going to play this, I'm going to play this, and this is going to play this, whatever, and you've got to try and play it from both sides and not use information that you wouldn't normally have and that sort of stuff, which is a little bit hard. But I found that I could really quickly smash out 10 games with one deck versus another, and it just gave me a good way to see, is this deck at all viable, or is it just absolute garbage? And
it lets you know what you're scared of from the other side of it as well, right?
Yeah, as well. Yep. So that's a quick tip.
The other thing that I use a little bit is a program called Xmage, which is, it's kind of clunky. It's free, which is the reason I use it. It lets you load deck lists in and play against an AI. There is a mode, I think, where you can play against other people, but I've never had much luck in actually playing kind of directly against other people. But you just basically get the deck lists you want to, and you can load up against a problematic matchup. The AI is mediocre at best, but it gives you an idea of, what do I do when there's a blocker? Or, what do I do if they randomly kill my creature? So, it's gold fishing plus, I guess, but it's not a whole lot better than that particularly. But, it's an option. The other thing that I do, and I know we've talked about it before, is just podcasts, right? There's just, you will find now, you go to CFB, Channel Fireball, or if you go to Star City Games, I promise you will see infinite reports about the MC, and then also what decks people think are good, what decks are going to beat Hogak, why you should play Hogak. And so there's going to be a lot of content coming out that's really valuable information, and they'll give you ideas of what's good against it. And so you can kind of take that, knowing the deck that you're going to play, and work out some of your own sideboard guides. And that's something I've done before as well. When you sit down for a tournament you're really keen on doing well at, is don't feel obligated to memorize everything, right? It's okay to just kind of have notes and say, against this style of deck, against control, right? And that doesn't mean it has to be like blue-white control or something. It's just like, against the strategy that's going slow, I want to do this type of thing. And it lets you kind of just get that idea out, and you don't sit there looking at your sideboard going, oh, I forgot what I'm supposed to do in this matchup, right? And so have notes. You're allowed to look at handwritten things between rounds. You're not allowed to look at phones or electronic devices. That's not okay. But as far as handwritten notes or printed documents, go for it.
Yeah. So there's a few tips for you guys out there for how you might go about your testing. One thing with Modern, just to mention, is we sort of spoke about it before with how expensive Hogak is. It is an expensive format. Generally, standard decks you can get ranging from $20 up to $200 or $300. They're not super expensive. If you're buying them outright, that's a lot of money, but generally you're buying them in pieces, that sort of stuff. But Modern, because you're dealing with cards that are really old, they are expensive. So for most people, they're kind of stuck with a deck. And, Cracker, using you as an example, you've got your living end deck. If you didn't have access to somebody who basically has a card store, that would be the deck that you would be playing for Modern, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be looking at ways that I can, and I did, like, there are other cards that are available to kind of improve that deck in this kind of hateful metas. And I could get away with probably spending $30 or $50 to have a better chance, but I have the option to, move into something completely different, so...
I'm yes, we are very lucky to have that friend. But for a lot of people, their Modern deck is their Modern deck, and they may have bits and pieces for one or two decks, but mostly they're quite restricted in what they're going to play, and especially at this level, at the MCQ level or your local store level, if you're testing during the week or whatever, you will find that people play their same deck pretty regularly. There's going to be the guys that are going to turn up, say for this MCQ, like the locals in Melbourne, like your Tim Hughes, your Chew for the Coles, those sorts of guys that are the good high-level players in Melbourne that do a lot of grinding to play a lot of tournaments. Those are the sorts of guys that are going to come with the top decks because they want to win. But for a lot of the field, they're going to come with their deck. So that can also play in a little bit in your testing. You need to consider, it's not going to be the Mythic Championship metagame where over 20% of the field is going to be Hogak, because not everybody can afford to drop $1,000 on a deck just sort of out of nowhere that might get banned next week. So you need to take that into consideration a little bit with your testing, and you can't go too over the top with what the pro scene metagame is for your local stuff. Any other last sort of tips or anything that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, one last thing. It's fun. Just have fun. Playing right. Magic in tournaments is just like sweet. Try and get a group of mates together and just go have a blast for a day. Yeah, it's good. If you can get a group together, you go and play a tournament, it's great fun. It's always a good day. And I hope, Scott, as we sort of mentioned, you're planning on playing this MCQ, which is going to be interesting. We will spend a bit of time with you, and we'll probably talk about it a fair bit on the next episode about how the actual tournament's going to run and those sorts of things. But you're going to have a blast just being there with the other guys, and hopefully you win a couple of rounds at least. And who knows, you may somehow get all the way to the end, and you'll be off to Richmond.
I doubt that very much. Not with my $30 deck. But,
it won't be $30 at the end of it if you do win. But
it'll be an $80 deck plus the sleeve. So, but I'm just planning to go along, have a bit of fun. Like Joel said, just enjoy it, and I'm just want to soak up the atmosphere. If I can even just get one win, I'll be happy. But there's all sorts of side stuff going on, which I'm happy to look at as well. So
there's not so much at this one, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that off air.
But if you are in Melbourne and you've listened to this podcast and you do see us at the tournament, come up and say g'day.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll have some little handouts that we can give that've got our website details and such on there, and so reminder.
We'll be rocking our hoodies and our play mats
and
for those of us that have got them.
Yep, my tokens that have in my deck box have got the Magic Beans sleeve, so we'll stand out. It also help that one of us, Chris, is 6'6", can't miss him.
So that sort of leads us into what are we sort of considering playing the potential of the Hogak ban, and how does that compare to our prediction for the MC? So, Chewy, what was your prediction for the MC?
I don't want to brag, but I will. No, I predicted that Tron would do really well, and it wasn't hugely represented numbers-wise, but it did put 2 copies in the top 4, different variants of Tron, but still, there were 24 total Tron lands in the top 4, and one being the eventual winner. So I feel good about my prediction, but I thought it would also have been more represented than it was. So I think a lot of Tron players played Hogak instead. But Tron. I feel okay about my prediction, but I also feel like I got it wrong a bit as well.
And you're planning on playing, at this stage, you're planning on Eldrazi Tron?
Yeah, Eldrazi Tron. So, Chalice of the Void for 1. Scott, that means that every spell that costs 1, Lightning Bolt, cough, cough, gets countered if you try to cast it. So, that seems really powerful in the format at the moment. So, I am, I'm planning to run a deck that plays a play set of those.
And it seems to have a decent matchup against Hogak if that doesn't get banned. So, it seems like a good place to start.
I have Leyline.
Yeah. And Chalice on 1 is good against all the 1-drops and those sorts of things. So, it's should be a pretty good deck. And, there was one in the top 8 of the MC. So, good work on your prediction. Cracker, what was your prediction from the MC?
Well, I predicted that because Bridge from Below got banned, Hogak wouldn't turn up to big numbers.
I think you were a bit wrong.
I was close. I said Dredge. I called Dredge as my shot because I thought people would be skimping on Graveyard Hate. Also the worst prediction of all time, I'd like to point out. No Graveyard Hate.
No Graveyard Hate.
In your defense, though, the deck with the highest win percentage, though, was Hogak Dredge. Yeah.
Look, I'll take that, but honestly, it was a pretty horrible prediction. I mean, if I just said it's a graveyard deck, I would have been fine, but I said there'll be no Graveyard Hate, and that was just,
all hate.
And you're leaning towards playing Cheerios at this stage?
I think I'm almost certainly going to play Cheerios. I've actually... Oh, one last thing. I joined a Facebook group. That's another really good idea. Because if you're keen on playing a deck, there's a Facebook group for whatever the deck is that you're going to play. And I jumped in and said, hey guys, girls, I'm about to play an MCQ in a few weeks. Can you give me some pointers? And everyone's super helpful. So I've had a bunch of people share their deck lists with me and give some ideas about what cards are really good. And there've been a couple of things that I've been testing that I would never have considered that seem like really good additions. So
it's good. I've definitely done it myself, and I know Chewy, you have it as well. You jump in the groups, really in the Facebook groups, and have a chat on there. The other thing with that is, if you see someone who's won a tournament recently or got a top 8 with the deck that you're thinking of playing, find them on Twitter. Most people, you hit them up on Twitter, or almost everybody's on Twitter these days. Send them a question on Twitter. I'm looking at playing your deck. What would you change? Because everybody plays a tournament and then goes, these 3 cards in my sideboard were garbage, so I'd change those, or I'd take one of these out of the main deck, or whatever it is. Just hit them up. Most people are going to reply to you and say, this is what I do. You got nothing to lose, so that's another good resource to consider. For me, my prediction for the MC was Izzet Phoenix, which was pretty highly represented. The Izzet version didn't get into the top 8, but it was definitely quite right up there. There was a mono red version in the top 8, which was pretty cool. But it didn't win. At the moment, that was the deck that I was planning on playing. I've got that deck built. I'm just a couple of cards short. And I've definitely played it before, but for me it kind of comes down to, is Hogak going to get banned? If it doesn't, I don't know if I want to play Phoenix, and depending on what Chris plays, I may audible into Hogak.
Is the mono red Phoenix deck a consideration?
Yeah, so the other one I'm considering is the mono red version, although I saw a few lists from the SCGs on the weekend that were actually Gruul, which is one of the guilds, the red-green guild that we were sort of talking about at the start of the episode. A Gruul version of it, and it's basically just plain green for Ren 6. So it plays 3 copies of Ren 6. And from what I've heard from listening to other people, they think that's quite a good addition to the deck. Gives you a bit more grind for the long game with some card advantage, helps you pick off 1 toughness creatures and that sort of stuff. And if you ever ultimate it, it's game over with that deck. You've got so many spells in your graveyard that you can cast with Retrace, and yeah, pretty cool. So they're the three decks that I'm considering, but I just want to know if Hogak's getting banned or not. I think it's just going to have such a big impact on the metagame and the decks that people play. So yeah, we'll have to see. Scott, you didn't give us a prediction because you didn't know any decks, but you're planning on...
half-heartedly predicted that Chandra was going to have a real dominance there and win, but that clearly didn't happen. But,
that did not. What are you looking at playing?
Well, I have got my eye on it's a theme deck more than anything else. It's not competitive at all, but it's a Dino deck. So it's not even red. It's green white, I think, from memory. I found it on Tapped Out, and I quite liked it. It looked quite simple to play. So, I mean, I don't expect it to win at all, but I think I'll have fun with it. It's a lot of dinosaurs. So we'll see how that goes. But it's something to do.
All right, so for you, if that's the deck that you're considering playing, then yeah, goldfish it. Put it together on Tapped Out, or print out some proxies of the deck and sit down in the land room and play it and just see how does this go? How does it work? What am I doing each turn? The thing you got to remember with Modern is it is a really fast format, and if you're not doing anything on turns 1, 2, and 3, you're dead. So yeah, you want to make sure your deck's at least doing something. As fun as it's going to be just being at the tournament, going there and just losing every single game is not that exciting. A little bit depressing.
Well, this has been advertised as an aggro deck. So with
you'll have to share the list with us, and we'll all have a look.
Yeah, I'll chuck it up.
Tell you how bad it is.
Alright, cool. So back to Mono Red.
That's fine.
Lightning Bolt's a good backup plan.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, that's pretty much going to do us for this episode. Hopefully you've got a few tips on how you can test for the MC and sort of what decks you can... the MCQ. None of us play at the MC.
Not yet.
No, not yet. What sort of decks you're going to be facing there, those types of things. So if you've got some ideas on what you think the metagame is going to look like, what you're looking at playing, if you want to get in touch with any of us to have a chat about any of the decks that we're looking at playing, anything along those lines, then yeah, make sure you hit us up and keep an eye out for us at the Mythic Championship. Our next episode should come out before the qualifier. So we'll have a bit more to say about how our testing's going and a bit of tournament prep and that sort of stuff. So before I wrap up, anybody else got any last points or anything they want to go through? Nope.
No,
silence.
Thanks for listening.
Cool. That's always a good sign. So yeah, if you do want to get in contact with us, make sure you hit us up either via email, magicbeanscast@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter @magicbeanscast. You'll find us on all the usual podcast places, which you've already found because you're already listening to us. Facebook, just search for Magic Beans Cast. You'll find us on there, and our YouTube channel. Chewy's put up a few more videos up on there, so make sure you stop past there and like and subscribe, as everybody asks.
Hit the bell.
Yes. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do us for this episode. So thank you again for listening, and we will see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.